So a lot of people know my story, where I was raised, where I was born, and some may not. So just to fill in a little bit with that story, I was born and raised here on the Monterey Peninsula. The early years in growing up, we lived in Seaside. And then about second, third grade, we moved to Marina. And at the time, both of the communities of Seaside and Marina were highly influenced by the military base of Fort Ord. And with Fort Ord and military bases comes a lot of diversity. And so I grew up in a community that was highly diverse, a lot of culture in the community, and also a lot of embracing of each other's culture at that time in both Seaside and Marina. And when I graduated from high school, went to college, my intent was not to be an educator. I never thought that I would be a teacher. So what brought me to education originally was, truthfully, I needed a job. I needed a job that had a decent salary, of course, but also had an opportunity to have health care, health benefits to provide for my family at the time. So I started at my alma mater, Seaside High School, as a campus supervisor. So after leaving the position I had at Seaside High School, I took a position at El Sasal Middle School. And at the time, again, it was really about providing for my family. And over the next 8 to 10 years, that changed from a need for income and stability to really understanding the position that educators are in to have an impact directly with young people, and then a larger impact over time throughout the community and throughout society. And that continues to be a drive for me and why I do the work that I do now, which is really focused on how can we impact the young people that we are trusted with on a day-to-day basis, and then how can that impact have a greater effect on the larger community in general. So that's kind of a short story of how I got to my why and why I continue to do this work as a superintendent. As we've progressed over the past 5 or 6 years, there's also been an internal drive led by some external environmental factors that have led us to really having to become more open-minded to looking at how can we provide a better learning and working environment for those that are in our school sites and our buildings, and those that we are impacting on a day-to-day basis. Originally, it started with creating an opportunity for diversity, inclusion, and equity, to now including justice in that model as well, and working on creating this framework for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so really when we look at the two endpoints of justice and inclusion, now we're really talking about a different way to approach creating a mindset in our work, right? So what does justice look like, and how does that relate to injustice? And then what does inclusion look like for students, for staff, in the work we're doing? And so an inclusion is not about creating ways to exclude anybody. It's really about looking at who is now feeling excluded, and how do we connect things so that they feel included in our work. So really that's what's brought us to the work of the JEDI work. And now over the past several months, we've put in 2 new positions directly to coordinate the work, but also to really work with school sites and school staff to create an opportunity for ongoing dialogue about what this work would look like over time, knowing that there isn't a quick fix to anything, and that's not what we're looking for. We're really looking for a new approach to providing the most inclusive environments for students and staff. And so that's our work. So please tell us your name and title.
Tamisha Allen Smith, Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Coordinator.
My name is Diaz Garcia. I'm also Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator.
Tell us where you were both born and raised.
So I was born in Dallas, Texas, and I was raised here in Salinas. My family moved here when we were 5, but I feel like I have some dual citizenship because I used to spend every summer in Texas and my school time here in Salinas.
And I was born and raised here in Salinas, California. My parents migrated from Mexico, and then I was their firstborn. I grew up here, was part of this district.
Is there anything in your upbringing that led you to the work you do today?
Absolutely. I come from a family of educational trailblazers, and I had great role models, and I wanted to be that type of change agent in youth's life because I had great people that empowered me and poured into me, and I felt that change, and so I wanted to be a part of that change for youth.
I grew up in a immigrant household. I was the first to go to school. My parents didn't have a education, and even though they didn't know much about college, they always wanted me to go to college. When I was in second grade, Prop 227 passed, and I was no longer to speak Spanish in my bilingual education classes. I knew how to speak English, but I didn't understand why I had to speak English and I couldn't speak my home language. Fortunately, the next year in third grade, I was able to learn more about my culture and my background. So I was able to see both sides of what education can be. And I wanted to be part of that for people in my community in the future. I know that education can be a form of liberation or oppression, and I wanted to be part of that liberation. Also, I know that I'm not free. We're not free till everybody is free. So I want to work alongside everybody else to get to that justice and equity and liberation for all of us.
So Tamisha, are you able to recognize how your experiences would be able to apply to the work you're doing now?
Definitely. My lived experience as a student, like I said, was a positive one, but there were times where I didn't feel like I belonged. And I definitely don't want to perpetuate or continue activities or systems that would make someone feel excluded like I felt at times. On the other side of that, I want to also empower not only adults, the youth as well, as I was empowered as a youth and an adult to work in this type of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, really making it feel like people belong and they're seen and their stories are valuable and their voice is valuable.
Growing up, I was excellent at school, doing school, going through school. I thrived. I got really good grades. So I know how to navigate the system, but it's not about being able to navigate the system. I want us to have a district and a community where we are being our full selves, where we feel safe, where we feel like we belong, that our home background is validated and important and worthy, and not something to be ashamed of or something to hide.
So tell us a little bit about your why.
I think that's easy to talk about. I'm a mother of 4 Afro-Indigenous young ladies, and I have to be a model. And that is my calling, is to be a model. As I spoke before about being a model for our youth in the community, every single day I have to get up and I have 4 young ladies that are looking at me as to how to navigate the world and how to be a Black woman in this society today. And being able to empower them to lift their voice, to be an integral part of their community, to know that they're worthy to speak their truth, to live their truth. And that extension of my home, my why, that just goes into my everyday work.
My why is that we should be able to just be. Just be. Not be productive, not be better than something else, but just be. That goes beyond our degrees, our grades, our titles, our languages we speak, color of our skin. How can we just create a society where everybody can just be who they are?
Well, thank you both for, not just taking the risk into a new position that you are designing as we move along, but also really looking both internally as a self-reflective educator and human being, but also looking externally at the impacts we can have. And our work isn't really about trying to change anybody's mindset or political ideology. Our work is really about getting all of us to be in that learning modality, to be more expansive in our mindset, to ensure that our spaces are inclusive. And when we know the research is pretty straightforward, that when there are inclusive environments, students will learn at much higher rates and get deeper into their learning and be more successful. So I thank you both for your work, and I know the work ahead of us is going to be challenging and enduring, but it will be rewarding on multiple levels. So thank you both for your work.